Hang on, let me just click on the got it, so it's not on my screen here.
Thank you once again for tuning in to another episode of RIA Collective. We're here taking the fear and mystery out of going independent for those captive advisors who really want to become a fiduciary and claim your independence in the financial services space. I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled, to be joined by Corey Kupfer. I'm going to stop at Corey. We're going to start again. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of RIA Collective. My name is Charlie Van Derven. I'm the president of Social Advisors and the host of RIA Collective. We're here taking the fear and mystery out of going independent. If you're a captive advisor in our financial services industry and you know your fiduciary responsibilities on the independent side of the industry, we're a great resource for you. We're here to help you transition smoothly. And my guest today, he's different than the other guests we've had on. To this point, we've interviewed RIA leadership, people who have helped a lot of advisors transition into RIAs. Today, we're going to take the legal approach to that. So, Corey Kupfer, you are just such a great guest to have on because you bring different perspective. Corey is an attorney. He's an author. He is also a podcast host. He's good looking. He's probably got a good golf game. He's got everything we all wish we had, right? Corey,
I'm going to deny the good golf game part. I can't claim.
Yeah, I might. Same. I did all right this week, but I know it comes and goes, right? So, Corey, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have a different perspective. We've interviewed to this point RIA leadership, who, of course, in one time or another made that move themselves. Many of them, I think probably the biggest firm we've really talked to the CEO of, Jeff Concepcion, a few episodes back. Jeff's got about 350 advisors, sure. Right? So he's helped advisors move, but he's never kind of sat on the legal side of this whole thing. So you've got a different perspective. I'm excited for you to share that with our listening audience. And of course, most of our listeners come from that wirehouse space, that Morgan, that Merrill, that UBS, even Jones, and you name it, that captive environment. And they're listening to us because, Corey, they want to make a change. Yeah. And so your advice from the legal side is going to be so key to that. But I want to start off getting to know you a little bit first. First off, the world runs on networking. I don't know if you share that sentiment with me.
I do.
Yeah. And we got introduced by a mutual friend of ours, Josh Wilson. And Josh is awesome. And you guys both have a deal-making podcast, your Deal Quest. Do you remember what Josh's is called? I should have prepared for this, but
I forget the name of it. But yeah, it's a great deals podcast as well. There are very few out there that are like mine, where they talk about all types of deals, not just M&A. And his is one of those, and mine is one of those, and I think it's great.
Yeah, and Josh is awesome. And we'll get the name, when we put the final recording together, I'll have a name in there for sure. So slip my mind for the moment here. You also wrote a book that I love the title of, Authentic Negotiating, right? On the Deal podcast, I listened to a few episodes in preparation of our conversation today. So you're a negotiator, and it sounds like that's been a significant part of your career.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I feel like I say I do it every day. I don't know if that's quite true, but it's close to true if it's not absolutely true, because, in addition to the Breakaway work, which we're going to focus on, today, we do a lot of deal work. So we do a lot of M&A and tuck-ins and advisor onboarding deals for folks in the space. And of course, that all takes, negotiation. And then, there's some other ancillary stuff. Occasionally we're dealing with like partnership split ups and things like that take negotiation. I much prefer to do it on the positive deal side, but sometimes it's necessary on the other side as well.
Of course. I want to key on the word authentic.
Yeah.
Right. We serve an industry that I would say compliance struggles a little bit with communication. It's a canned communication industry. I think it's evolving out of that, at least, from our perspective. We're trying to push that evolution into really personalized and authentic communication. Talk to me about authentic negotiating. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, so here, I'm going to contrast it, and then I'll, it depends on how deep we want to get into I have a whole philosophy around it. It's in the book. But there are too many, in my mind, negotiating trainings, books, seminars, you name it out there, that are all around like tactics and counter tactics, and frankly, a lot of them are manipulative, and they actually maybe at a lower level they quote unquote work. If you want to talk about temporary results, but if you deal with any kind of sophisticated deals or negotiations like I do, where people on the other side are also experienced negotiators, that stuff's not going to work, and it's inauthentic, it's manipulative, and it's not the way you want to negotiate, I think, ever. But certainly in business, where business deals often have an ongoing component to them, an ongoing relationship, right?
Yeah.
You're merging your firms, you're doing, or even if they don't, especially if we're talking in the RA industry, which I think is true everywhere, but certainly in the RA space, it's a tiny industry. Everybody knows each other. You get a reputation. So you don't want to be inauthentic. You don't want to be manipulative. And I have a whole philosophy where you focus internally on clarity, detachment, and equilibrium to get to a true space of what you really want. We could spend hours just talking about the book, but that's not the purpose of this podcast. So I'll leave it at that. People can check it out.
Maybe that's a later episode, huh? And I'll tell you what, so I'll be 50 this year, so date myself a little bit right away. I got started working in this industry in a telemarketing position, really, right? We were doing websites for some wirehouses, and as I got into that, I came up with the company I was with by pounding phones. Mm-hmm. And I talk a lot about the way sales has changed over the years. Yeah. So that's 25 years ago.
Yeah.
A little crazy. Crazy, it's so long ago. But I mean, I was trained in a methodology called SPIN. And I don't want to cut on the SPIN methodology, because I mean, I absolutely agree with you, right? It was like, ask the questions in a certain way so you back your subject into the corner. They can't say no, because if they do, they look stupid. It's never felt right, but that's kind of traditional sales, and it sounds like traditional negotiating as well. So strategic. Yeah,
and like you said, it's never felt right. I think it's never been the right approach, but I think it's less effective and less acceptable now, because I think we moved into, listen, one of the positive things in my mind about social media and all this stuff that's happened, right? There's some negatives, there's plenty of negatives, but I think we moved into a time of great authenticity. I think it's harder to hide. People find out who you truly are, and you need to line up your actions with, who you say you are, and hopefully what your internal beliefs and values are. And you're going to get more likely called out these days than you used to, if you don't do that. So that applies in sales, it applies in negotiating, it applies in how you show up in business generally and in life. Yeah. And I think it's just tougher to get away with that stuff anymore.
Yeah, man, I absolutely love that. We're so focused on building relationships now, as opposed to saying the right thing at the right time to make somebody do something they really don't want to do, and leave them with a sour taste in their mouth anyway. So I love that. So I thank you for your approach to that, and for kind of championing that, because a lot of that sales methodology, negotiating methodology, that goes away, right? When it's really based on relationship and everybody winning, or at least, partially winning in the end, right?
100%.
That's awesome. Corey, tell me a little bit about DealQuest. Let's push that out there and make people aware of it. And then we'll talk about the Breakaway attorney stuff as well.
Yeah, sure. So, it's interesting, because I started DealQuest 3.5 years ago. At the time, it was actually branded differently. About a year in, we rebranded it. And I had this the reason for it was that I realized that, I travel a lot in the entrepreneurial world, obviously a lot in the RIA world, which is entrepreneurial, right? All these breakaway brokers starting up new firms, moving from being employees or in some sort of captive space or contractors to truly being entrepreneurs and running a business where you can build enterprise value. But we also, and it's our biggest single niche, but we have clients across other industries as well. And, as president of the New York chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization, I just swim in entrepreneurship. And what I find is that these great entrepreneurs who are building, good companies are always focused on organic growth, which they should be. You need to be able to get a customer and a client and another one, or else you're not going to be in business unless you're the 0.1% of companies that are formed just to do acquisitions, right? Everybody else has to go get customers and clients.
Yes.
The problem is that that's not the only way you can grow, right? You have this other way to grow: inorganic growth, deal-driven growth. And it's not just M&A, it's licensing deals and strategic alliances and joint ventures, and even real estate investment where you can build wealth, along with your company, and online affiliate deals and distribution deals, you name it, right? There are deals to be done. And my just observation over 35 years of doing this is that too many companies don't take advantage of this other way to grow. And they have misconceptions about it. They think, oh, you have to be, you have huge capital, you have to be a bigger company. I'm too small, I'm in the wrong industry. My assertion is that every company can do a deal of some type that can help them grow. So I really did the podcast to get that message out there and to show the different types of deals. And I have entrepreneurs on, and I have various professionals that help entrepreneurs, again, across the spectrum, right? Doing deals with competitors, we've talked about, white labeling deals. I mean, you name it, any kind of deal, just to give people, open up that thought process and encourage them. But being a niche podcast, I never thought it would become this big thing because, and it was fine. I said, hey, if 50, 100 people listen to an episode, those are great. I'll serve 50, 100 people. One or two of them may need my services at some point. I'll meet some great guests and it's worth it. Well, yeah. In 3.5 years, I don't know how it's happened. I mean, I sort of do. We did great marketing and whatever, but, and obviously people like the podcast, but, we're now at the point where we're getting, 6,000, 7,000 listens an episode, right. 30,000 listens, not, I mean, they might be repeated people. So I'm not saying we have 20, and we're top 1.5% listen notes, which ranks, reach of podcasts has us as top 1.5% out of 2.8 million podcasts. And I only raise this because I'm totally blown away. And I think, we've held to our niche very closely. We have been consistent, an episode every week for 3.5 years. And, I put together a great marketing team. And for me, I get to serve more people, which is my, main motivator in doing that. And I have fun. I love doing it because I love talking about deals.
Well, and what's fun is, we're new friends, right? So, yep. But I come in, I get a chance to get to know you today. I will tell you, in the limited number of, we haven't done the episodes you have yet, but we're getting there. We'll get there. Maybe I think we plan on doing a few more frequently than what you're doing. So we'll get there a little bit quicker, but I love this part of what I get to do because I get to put blinders on and I come to this business because meeting new people is my favorite thing. Yeah. One of my favorite things, helping out along the way if we can. Absolutely. Along those lines, in that research and getting ready for today, Corey, I came across a nonprofit, which I don't think is active anymore. Mm-hmm. 1 + 1 + 1 = 1. Let's I want to give my listeners an opportunity to get to know you outside of just that professional life. Yeah. This is a really cool thing that I saw. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that nonprofit and where that's evolved into?
Yeah. So, for me, I've done a lot of personal growth and professional growth and, internal work to, this big question we have, like, what is our purpose? Why are we here? Right. Yeah. And for me, I'm all about you want to talk about networking and bringing people together in a bigger way. I'm all about bringing people together across perceived differences. So we realize we're all one. I've had the benefit of traveling the world, spending time in different cultures. And what you find when you do that is that everybody is, everybody in the world, every average person wants the same thing, right? They want to be able to feed their kids. If they live in a place where education is available, they want to educate their kids. They want their kids to have a better life than they did. They want to improve themselves. They want to grow. Forget all the political stuff, all the reasons, all the people that try to divide us. At a fundamental level, we're all connected humanity is my belief. So that led us, to me to do various types of work around that. And then my wife also, one of the reasons we were introduced was because we were up to similar things in the world. And so at some point we put together this nonprofit, which at the time was called 1 + 1 + 1 = ONE. So it was the number 1 + 1 + 1 = ONE. And the concept was, you're one, I'm one, he's one, she's one. And that all equals a big one, ONE, one humanity, right? And we did two things mainly in there. We did a lot of race relations and intercultural understanding work, which is consistent with, my purpose. And then also a lot of young women's empowerment work, right? To work with young women to have them own their power and their voices and then over time, what's evolved for my wife and I, because, we knew so many people who were running great nonprofits and frankly were burning themselves out. And, listen, beyond the big nonprofits that are super well funded, most nonprofits run scrambling for money. All the people are overworked. They're trying to do, great work, and many of them are. And we discovered early on what used to be called the fourth sector. Now they talk about socially conscious companies and type B corporations and things like that. And there's a lot of, and the legal structure has changed to support companies that want to make a profit and also make a difference. Like you used to have to either make a profit or make a difference, right? Yeah. And now you can do both. So, and we've come to believe in that sector even more so to have a sustainable business model around the impact you want to make. So you're not dependent upon foundation funding that comes and goes. You're not always scrambling for money. You're not being influenced by the money. You know, you're able to sustain yourself. So we ended up closing the nonprofit at some point, but what we still do, all of that work around race relations and young women's empowerment and social justice, bringing people together across all kinds of differences, whether it's political, you know, racial, social. And we just do that through various programs that are more in the for-profit sector. And then we have nonprofit fiscal sponsors for certain things. And then we also have a portion that we give back to all these, you know, all these causes that we believe in.
That is awesome, man. We need more people out there fighting the fight, if you will, right? I mean, really making a difference in society, Corey. So thank you for your contributions socially, internationally, it sounds like as well. That's really cool, man. I appreciate it. I want to get into, the legal work that you do. Your law firm, as you said, a lot of RIA representation, also segments, but for the purpose today, really helping the people who are listening to set the stage correctly for themselves. Yeah. Right. Again, we've heard from RIA leadership. You have a totally different perspective on this. Really, how do you set yourself up for success? And try to not get sued by the big brother you're leaving, right? Okay. So, Corey, let's talk a little bit about the law firm first, and then we'll get into some of your tips and ideas and ways to make it go smoothly. Sure.
Yeah. So in the RIA space, we've I work with the first client I ever helped break away from anywhere was over 23 years ago.
Okay.
And in fact, we're in the process of working with that client to actually he's exiting at this point. So it's been we've been representing him all these years. And certainly over the last 12, 13, 14 years, obviously the independent advisor movement has really accelerated. The infrastructure around, as I'm sure your listeners know, the independent space is so increased with the capacity of the custodians and the tech players and the other platforms and services and players out there, consultants, you name it, to the place where I believe that there is nothing that's not at least competitive with and certainly often superior to what you can get at the wirehouses and private banks and even many of the IBDs. So it's been interesting to see over these 23 years, whatever the industry evolved. We have we do hundreds, literally have done hundreds and hundreds of advisor transitions over that period of time. So we're one of the leading firms in the country that do that. You can count on your fingers on both hands, probably really, if you talk about the top firms, maybe on one hand that have done that many. And what distinguishes ourselves from our competitors out there, and it just makes us very different, is that pretty much everybody else who's done the kind of volume of transitions we do really is a compliance firm that does these transitions and then is running people into the compliance program, which is nothing wrong with that. Compliance is important. It's just we come up out at it from the other side. We do everything that's not compliance, right? So we do the transition. We get people out clean, give them a whole roadmap on how they don't get sued from, from Mother Merrill or Morgan Stanley or UBS or Goldman Sachs or Wells Fargo, whoever it is. And then we also, because of my and my team's background in corporate structuring and equity structuring and deal structuring, because one of the big differences right now from when I started was, it used to be somebody coming out, they'd start a practice, right? They'd make a very nice living. Maybe they have one other person with them. Now you got, major teams coming out, right? I mean, we do teams that are multi-billion-dollar teams. We also do ones that are, a few $100 million under management. But even the smaller ones, they're coming out with this mentality of, okay, I'm going into business myself. Yes, to get away from the compliance, quote unquote, the oversight, the lack of decision making, the lack of being a fiduciary and all these other things, but also they're moving towards something and they realize they can build something in their own vision and also grow it and build enterprise value. And certainly over the last, 5-7 years, I mean, the valuations and the money that's come into the space has gone crazy. So they see that. So what they need is some more sophisticated equity structuring, corporate structuring, anticipating different classes of equity. Maybe what if I want to bring in other advisors and give them a piece, phantom equity, things like that, that are much more sophisticated corporate structures, and they're anticipating the deal work. The compliance is sort of a given, you need it, it's important, I'm not putting it down. We partner with compliance consulting firms and compliance law firms who handle that piece of it, but we do all of that sophisticated legal work, not only to get them out, but then also to get them properly set up for their, and then we become growth partners with them, from the start all the way through their own exit.
I love that. I love it. How far in advance of a departure? If I'm at Morgan Stanley today and I really know I'm going independent, and I'm struggling with all kinds of things, we won't get into details there. How far ahead of my departure should I be sitting down with you?
Yeah, so we can talk about ideal time frame, then we can talk about what can be done if necessary, because that comes up, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So we usually say, hey, listen, if and whatever, great, reach out to us 6 months in advance, even longer, right? Because here's the thing, even if you're going to leave in a year, right? Some people are hanging around because maybe they have a deferred, comp or something that's going to hit where they, they're waiting for that money to hit. We don't have to do the full scope of work up front, but this employment transition work, this roadmap that we write up for you and this consulting we give you to tell you exactly what your agreements say, what state law says, whether you're under the protocol for broker recruiting or not, all of these things, that can't be done too early. Reason being that there are mistakes people make while they're still there that run them into trouble. So the earlier you understand what you can and can't do, the better off you are, because the less chance you'll make mistakes. In terms of forming the entity and doing your operating agreement, shareholders agreement, your contracts, whatever, we can do that all way later. So, don't hesitate to come to us early. Now, in terms of how long it actually takes from the time an advisor says, I want to go to, the SEC has by law 45 days to approve your new firm, assuming that you're going fully independent and you're starting your own firm. Okay. In practice, they approve the firms in 30, 31, 32 days, depending on if you hit a weekend. Okay. Obviously, you need time beyond that to, prep for the ADV, get your custodian in place, your tech in place, all that kind of stuff, whatever. So we usually say, try to give us at least a minimum of 90 to 120 days. And that's tight. So, but if you're 6 months out plus, that's great. And you've probably spoken to a custodian already and, gotten some information from them and are starting to research your tech stuff. On the legal side, we can get everything done within the 60-day period that you're working on your ADV, but there's reasons to do it earlier, especially on the employment transition side.
Now, I've seen a lot of, not the front row seat that you have, but, we've seen a lot of advisors move out of that over the last 20 plus years, out of that captive space into IBD or, an RIA. Corey, I've seen people do it well. I've seen people do it terribly. I've seen people leave the wirehouse with the objective of starting their RIA, never get to that stage. Yeah. And so one of the things that we're trying to uncover with RIA Collective is, what's the difference, right? Why does one advisor leaving Wells Fargo Advisors, why are they more successful than the next advisor? Any insight into that question?
Yeah, let's start outside the legal realm, right? Let's just, the first question is, what model are you in and what is your relationship with your clients, right? Because, Charlie, you brought up relationships earlier. Yeah. This is one of the ultimate relationship businesses, right? It's, sure. People are much more tied in most cases to their advisor than to the firm, right? That was proven during the Great Recession when the independent advisor movement, 2008, 9, and 10 actually accelerated, right? Because the credibility of the big firms sort of, oh wait, Lehman's gone, Bear's gone, Merrill got gobbled up, by DOA, their great research didn't prevent me from being 30, 40% down. Like that was actually a boom for the RIA movement. Yeah. So, but the thing about it is that it does depend upon your relationship with the client. And in most, certainly wirehouse advisors have those kind of relationships where they're going to bring over 85, 90+ % of their business. And a lot of times the only reason they're not at 95 and they're at 85 is because they use it as an opportunity to trim their client base a little bit, right? And leave behind the ones that are less profitable or paying, or whatever, not totally fit their model. In certain other environments, like private banks, for example, or some of the firms, like the Alliance Bernstein type firms used to be, whatever, where they have much more of a, somebody's an asset gatherer and then they really hand them off to a relationship manager and they have a much more team approach and the relationships are stickier, right? Yeah. So in those cases, sometimes the percentages are lower and you really got to understand who's going to come with you. But in your typical wirehouse, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, UBS, Wells Fargo, Breakaway, you're going to take a high percentage of your clients and if you've been in the business for any period of time and have relationships. So if we get past that hurdle, then the main next thing is the legal mistakes, right? And usually that, I can get into some specifics around them, but I will say it on a high level, that usually comes from either ignorance or arrogance.
Yeah. I love that, actually. And I know where that fits in a couple of people I know across the board. So one of the things we talk about, going back to relationships, right? One of the things we typically recommend is, like, to your point, you can never start too early. In fact, I would recommend, if I'm talking to an advisor at UBS who's talking about independence, I'm like, well, circle this date a year from now, because that's the most important thing in retaining the assets, right? Is moving that 85, 90% over. Where are your relationships at with the clients, especially if you're part of a team, to your point, right? You gather the assets, turn over to a relationship manager. Now that, client service associate or whoever's in that position really, really owns the relationship. So 12 months in advance is usually the recommendation we give, is you got to start forming some social relationships. And it's not about business relationships. It's about, getting to know them, family, next generation, surprise and delight gifts, things like that. We really got to beef up those relationships so that people are going to come with you. Because I mean, what's the typical, non-communication, right? What's that typical time frame? That's, months that you can't speak to your clients.
Yeah, and that's a great point on the earlier you start that, because the thing is, even legally, if you start stepping up efforts that are outside the ordinary course of business very late in the game, that's one of the ways you run yourself into trouble. Because every employee advisors have a duty of loyalty to their employer for as long as they're there. So if they're at Morgan Stanley, they're supposed to do what's in the best interest of Morgan Stanley up until the day they resign. That doesn't mean you can't prepare to compete separately, get ready, your firm ready, file the SEC, find office space. You're supposed to do that all outside of business hours. But but what you can't do is call your clients in advance, things like that, right? So one of the things that they will look for, in addition to, the first thing they're going to do is a forensic review. And I say this to my clients so many times, and 99% of them follow my advice. And every once in a while, you have that cowboy or arrogant. That's where the arrogance come in. Yeah. Trust me, folks, you cannot beat forensics these days. You cannot. Anything you download, email to yourself, put on a zip drive, copy, even print, right? It's all digital. It's all tracked. So, so beyond that, the other way people run themselves into trouble is they breach this duty of loyalty. And some of the ways they do that is they start scrambling too late, right? To make sure they have relationships with their clients, and they do a bunch of stuff they weren't doing before. And then the firm can try to show that you only did that in anticipation of leaving. Now, if you start that way in advance, right, to just continue to build better relationships with your clients, being in better communication, then the odds of that being seen as doing it in anticipation of leaving are a lot lower, because that's good business practice anyway. Listen, if you're not leaving for 5 years, you should be doing that, right? So, it's just good business.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's something that we, even if someone's not, planning on making that move to independence, right? That social relationship, that social intelligence around, who they know and what they know, that's all good stuff for growing the business too. Corey, you're a wealth of information, man. I'm so lucky to know you. Our listening audience is so lucky to know you. Any other tips? We touched on a couple things from a legal perspective. We touched on relationship and making sure that you're putting your planning out months and months, if not a year and a half in advance. What am I not asking you that I should be?
Yeah, I would say two things. One on the legal side, and this may sound self-serving, but I will tell you what I tell my clients. It is so crucial that you get somebody who really knows this stuff. And what I say to prospects when I get referred to, whatever, they may have their local corporate counsel, their local employment counsel, and they want to use somebody, and they may even think it's better locally because they know the local law. Industry knowledge is so crucial, and industry reputation, right? One of the things we do is we on the resignation letters for our clients, they say, I resign. I don't expect there to be any problems, but if there are, I'll contact my counsel, and they put our name on there. That carries weight because they know, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why I say this is not just self-serving is I actually say to prospects, listen, if you're not going to use us for any reason, right? I want your business, I'd love to work with you. If you're not going to use us for any reason, go to the 4 or 5 other firms that have done hundreds of these like we have.
Yeah.
Like, I'll even give you their names because I'd rather have you go to my direct competitor than use your local person who's not done this. So go to somebody who's done 4 of these.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's crucial to work. And this not only on the attorney side, it's crucial to work with, experienced folks. If you're working with a consultant, if you want people who've really done it, you want accounting help that understands this space. Some of you may choose to work with some of the service providers of platforms out there, like a Dynasty Financial or, somebody like that, right? You want to get whatever you need for your infrastructure in place and for your support in place to be able to do this, right? It's probably the biggest move you're ever going to make in your life, with the exception of maybe eventually selling your independent RIA firm, right? So that's one big piece. The other thing for me is, totally outside the legal realm is, I mentioned before that most folks now do have something they're moving towards as opposed to what they're running away from, but make sure that that's the case, right? It's super important. I get it, right? You might be frustrated by the fact that, you're at a place where they're making you push product, or you're at a place where compliance is driving you crazy, which, by the way, at the big firms, what they call compliance is X% true compliance, meaning what's law and what's not. And then a much bigger percentage that's actually risk management, right? It's not compliance, it's not illegal. It's just risk management. And by the way, I don't blame them. If you're in a model where you have thousands and thousands of advisors, you have to manage down to the lowest common denominator. You can't run that business any other way, or else you're going to run yourself into trouble because some yo-ho somewhere is going to get you in trouble, right? So that's the model they have to run. The great thing about the risk of the independent space is that you get to make your own risk management decisions. You still want to be in compliance, what's legal and not, but you get to make your own risk management decisions. So my point on that is that it's easy to find out what you're running from. I mean, that's the initial thing a lot of people say. I can't take my manager anymore. I can't take the compliance. They won't let me serve my clients the way I want to serve them. I want to be a true fiduciary, whatever it is. But have that vision to what you're running towards. This is an opportunity for you to create something in your own vision, your own values, build the team the way you want it, treat clients the way you want it. And the firms that I've seen most successful have taken the time not only to figure out what they don't want, but also to create a vision for what they do want. And that also then dictates, how they create their branding and how they create their messaging and how they, go out there, because there are a lot of firms out there and you want to distinguish yourself, and your story and your vision, and your commitment are what distinguishes you. And the firms that do that, really do the best. So, that's my other non-legal piece of advice.
Well, and that's a little plug for us. Social advice will help you create that vision. Corey, I'll tell you what, it's a lucky day for me. We got to know each other a few weeks ago, brief conversation. Is this the right fit? And absolutely it was immediately as soon as I met you. I knew it would be, because I trust what Josh, I trust Josh implicitly. So this is a lucky day for me because I feel like I have a new resource in an industry I've known for more than 20 years. That, I talk to a lot of advisors all the time, right? I coach a lot of Maryland, Morgan, and Jones, and some of them are trying to make a move, right? And I love your advice on know what you're going to. I love that, right? And I've never positioned it that way. It's always about, yes, compliance, this, or the fiduciary thing we talk about, right? Where, I can't be a true fiduciary to my clients, or whatever that might be. I love the advice on moving towards something as opposed to running away from something. I also love the knowledge that you just dropped on our listeners, and the knowledge that I know that I've got a resource to send people that I can absolutely trust, not only has their best interest in mind. And some of that is not just the work you've done with RIAs and advisors over the years. A lot of that stems from the book on authentic negotiating, right? So just the fact that we're talking about authenticity, a lot of that stems from the nonprofit work you've done in the past and the initiatives you're pushing there. I mean, those are marks of a quality person, not only a quality attorney in helping your clients, but a quality person as well. So I'm excited to be able to refer people to you. Now, my question to you, and if you say no, I'm going to edit this out. So my question to you is, Are you okay for our listeners who have some questions and, potentially, I'm sure we've got some, some prospects for you as well. Are you okay being a resource if they've got questions outside of this interview?
Absolutely. Listen, I'm a resource all the time. And, certainly people who come through trusted, referral sources like yourself, I'm going to get on the phone. We're not the kind of, law firm that says you got to pay us for an initial consult, right?
Sure,
We don't do that, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to spend hours and hours with you, but I'm
Sure,
happy to
yeah.
get on an initial phone call, answer some, some questions, talk about our experience, but also, give you some information on the things that, if you're an advisor looking to leave, you have questions that are burning on the top of your mind. I'll always take a call like that from a trusted resource. No question.
That is awesome. I appreciate that. What's the easiest way for people to get in touch?
Yeah. So first of all, if they want to just find out more information on the firm, the website is kupferlaw.com. That's KUPFERLAW.com. And by the way, on there, I've got a video on the RIA page that talks about how we differentiate ourselves, but I've also got a 10-tip series for breakaway brokers, who want to leave, right? A 10-step process video series on there that's free. So they can, they can reach out through there. And then my email is ckupfer, CKUPFER @kupferlaw.com. And you could always just, ping me an email and my assistant will get something on the calendar for us.
Awesome. And we'll get the 10 tips on the RIA Collective website too, so we can find it there. And Corey, I gotta thank you so much, man. All the things you're doing, you giving me some of your time is awesome. I appreciate that. Your knowledge, your insights, your advice, it's all golden. I appreciate it, man.
Well, Charlie, I appreciate, our relationship building here and also what you do for advisors as well, because that's crucial, and being on the show. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So for all of our listeners, I want to thank you for listening to another episode of RIA Collective with Corey Kupfer, Kupfer Law, and Charlie Van Derven, President of Social Advisors. If you know anybody that you think we should interview that, has good advice for those breakaway advisors who are looking to go independent, please send them over to riacollective.com. And of course, I'm always available too if you need me. I'm easiest to reach on LinkedIn, and Charlie Van Derven is a very easy name to find. So, Corey, thank you so very much. Our listeners, thank you very much. And this concludes another episode of RIA Collective.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you, Corey.